To understand the universe at its microscopic level, physicists spent the last century trying to divide space and time into smaller and smaller pieces. They took this smooth, continuous map of general relativity and attempted to quantize it, but the mathematics shatters. This top-down approach inevitably runs into ultraviolet divergences. At the extreme microscopic limit, the equations output infinities, and the physical model simply breaks down. A parallel crisis is currently affecting our ability to manage data. Planetary-scale infrastructure, from AI factories to telecommunications, relies on reactive, static graphs that cannot adapt to exponential complexity. As the number of interacting variables increases, like queue depths, PCIe bandwidth saturation, and memory tier states, the system suffers from the curse of dimensionality. The joint probability space of the network's behavior becomes too massive for standard hardware to hold. Because they cannot compute this massive state space in real time, current systems rely on reactive heuristics. They wait for a buffer to overflow before responding, resulting in network microbursts and stranded compute. Classical mathematics fails at both of these extremes. Whether we are mapping the cosmos or routing a modern data center, a rigid, background-dependent map cannot survive the limits of scale. To find a solution, we have to look past the physical components and focus on how they are connected. We must stop treating spacetime as a fixed background stage and network infrastructure as a collection of static wires. In physics, this means accepting that gravity is not an independent field waiting to be quantized. Gravity is the hydrodynamic shadow of an optimized quantum tensor network. It is an emergent equation of state, much like how the temperature of a gas emerges from the collision of countless invisible molecules. The tensor network structures used to model quantum gravity offer a framework for building the predictive control plane for advanced data fabrics. The TNQG model starts at the microscopic limit. It defines the universe not as a smooth coordinate map, but as a finite quantum state. This diagram illustrates the foundation of that state, a normalized superposition of graph topologies. The nodes on these graphs represent local quantum tensors, the intersection points where information is processed. The edges connecting them represent entanglement bonds, defining the capacity for information to flow. This structure is governed by the TNQG action functional, a variational loop that constantly optimizes the network to find its most stable configuration. This optimization minimizes both entanglement entropy and network complexity. By doing so, it acts as a regularizer, suppressing chaotically wiring and maintaining structural stability. The vacuum of empty space is actually a dense, actively computing web of tensor relationships, continuously seeking thermodynamic stability. To translate abstract entanglement into physical space, the system uses a mathematical mapping known as the geometry dictionary. This graph demonstrates how physical distance is calculated. Notice the minimal cut separating boundary region A and the emergent distance connecting subsystems B and C. Here, as entanglement capacity increases, the emergent distance between nodes shrinks. Distance simply measures how little information points share. This framework redefines curvature. This grid shows optimized bonds clustering densely around a central variation. Curvature is the network's structural response to a matter defect. The surrounding threads increase their bond capacity to accommodate the added energy, drawing the local geometry tighter. Gravity does not pull. It is the macroscopic consequence of a network redistributing its information capacity around a structural knot. A similar mathematical challenge exists in modern computing. To manage an AI factory, we have to translate massive raw variables into a coherent topology. The Predictive Tensor Control Plane ingests a continuous stream of high-dimensional telemetry across the network, compute, and storage layers. It processes this data using a specific mechanism called the Pattern of Life Tensor Train, or PaL-TT kernel. Kernel density estimation normalizes telemetry into a massive probability tensor. Compression breaks this matrix into discrete cores, reducing the memory to a linear scale. By reducing the complexity of the state space, commercial hardware can hold and query the behavioral probability of a data center in real time. With the telemetry compressed, we apply the dictionary to the data center. The variable that represents entanglement now calculates the network bond dimension. This bond dimension is derived from measurable engineering realities, including available bandwidth, queue pressure, trust scores, and policy friction. This allows us to replace legacy static hop routing with predictive geodesic routing. Evaluated directly on the hardware, the compressed PAL-TT cores sense the network's curvature, identifying future congestion, and bend traffic along holographic geodesics before physical buffers can overflow. Data no longer follows a fixed physical path. It flows through the path of least mathematical resistance in a predictive geometry. Autonomous optimization carries a severe risk. Left unchecked, predictive systems can trigger chaotic feedback loops and destabilizing oscillation. The TNQG model addresses this at absolute limits, like a black hole horizon. This charts generalized entropy transitioning from an early minimal surface to a late-time island, maintaining stability. In networking, this limit becomes bounded actuation, strictly governed by a hard-coded policy envelope. The system enforces these boundaries through a champion-challenger framework. A live champion model executes safe, strictly bounded adjustments, while a quarantined challenger model constantly tests radical new geodesics in the background. Predictive systems require rigid, mathematically enforced safety envelopes. They ensure the fabric learns without destroying its own structural integrity. This geometry-based approach completely redefines cybersecurity. Here, an attack is no longer a malicious signature waiting to be matched against a database. A threat is now classified as a topological defect, an unnatural tear or anomaly in the local probability geometry. Defense becomes an emergent property of topology preservation. The fabric isolates defects autonomously, quarantining anomalies without requiring human intervention. This framework moves global infrastructure away from static, fragmented packet forwarding toward a unified, self-aware computational geometry. Whether we are observing the gravitational bending of starlight or orchestrating the flow of global AI infrastructure today, the universe and our networks are governed by the same underlying reality: